Hey everybody, it is Elizabeth from Silvernest Homeschooling, mom of 4, homeschooling for 11 years, and today I have a saga for you, the great story of the quest for the perfect language arts curriculum. Now, I believe that there is one of these stories for every homeschool parent that has been homeschooling for a while. There's some subject that you feel so passionately about, so strongly about, that you are on the quest for the perfect curriculum, especially if you come from a perfectionist background like I do, or which is really funny because I don't really think of myself as a perfectionist until I study there's different kinds of perfectionists. So my kind of perfectionism, which can serve me well in homeschooling and can be a detriment to me, is that when I have a lot of energy, I do everything at a very high perfect level that cannot be maintained for very long. So then I get tired, drop everything, rest, get full of energy, think that I can then again achieve perfection and move back up the cycle. And it does tend to circle like that. So I've learned to put in time of rest. I've learned to lower the max standard so that the burnout doesn't happen. And in that process, though, there are some things I feel very passionate about. You've heard me, if you've been around here before, that we are very passionate about math, and we're very passionate about learning to write. Those are the two keys that we really wanted our kids to come out of homeschool with strong backgrounds in. And in the writing, also, of course, the reading, language arts, all the things that encompass that. With that being said, however, I am not a huge grammar fan. And you might find that odd. I have a minor in English from Whitworth College and a major in theater. And so my emphasis was on writing, and I do care about grammar and well-written things. But there were a couple moments in my life where I realized that high quality grammar does not a good, amazing writer make. And so my point is that we need to be exposing kids to lots of literature, exposing kids to lots of books, lots of writing practice. And then the grammar can be either osmosis or it can be picked up with practical help. However, I do believe in teaching grammar. I just don't believe in diagramming sentences, because my end goal is to create writers, not necessarily people who think critically about writing. So that was my goal. We studied E.E. Cummings in high school, and my teacher always said, you know, if you know a rule and you break it, you're a genius. If you don't know the rule, you're an idiot. And so I do believe that we need to know some grammar, so take all that with a grain of salt. But you'll understand why my background shifted from what kinds of language arts we tried to use with the kids to achieve the ultimate goal for our family, which was to create writers. And I'm happy to say that every single one of my children are writers, excellent in their age category, and some of them above and beyond. I have one daughter that has a very amazing brain, and she tested in the 8th grade and 12th grade level. So she's just got that gift. But her goal actually is to become a full-time writer when she grows up. The other kids are all extremely capable. They can pull out 5-paragraph essays or a creative writing story or a fun poem, all of those things. The other thing is that I do believe that nonfiction writing leads to better fiction writing and vice versa. So if you have a kid that emphasizes on creative writing, then I lean into that and then help them learn to master their nonfiction writing. But if I've got a child that leans into the nonfiction side, I will push that so that they can also, if they want to, be able to write in the fiction side. And I do believe that the ability to communicate with words via email in a business, in a professional setting, is key. So at the end of the day, that's the goal, to be clear with your words. So we went into this journey, and goal number 1, of course, teaching them read and actually physically handwrite. And I've covered how I taught my kids to read. I used Bob books, I used Anton B books, I used phonics from Explode the Code, and that worked great. But one day, Explode the Code ran out. And now I was left, this is like the 3rd grade, 4th grade dilemma. Where are we gonna go from here? Back up. My youngest went to kindergarten, to a Christian school for a year, and then we homeschooled. So this whole time, he kept giving me pushback on how much easier public school would be for him and how much more he would enjoy it. Now, I know his personality, so I knew he wouldn't do either of those things. But what he ended up doing was convincing me that he convinced himself that his life would be easier if I stopped making him do these homeschool things and had him do public school things. So in honor of pursuing an education led by my child, partly against my better judgment, but partly for the point that I was trying to make, I went and got the curriculum being currently used in our public school system for language arts. And I made the biggest mistake financially at that moment because I bought a few years worth, and I also hadn't enough confidence to know that my younger daughter didn't really need this lesson. So unfortunately, she was dragged along with us. And after a year of enduring this curriculum, which I don't have any more copies of, thankfully got rid of them all, they agreed with me that yes, indeed, the public school system was not better and that they wanted to try something else. So what we didn't like about that curriculum, which probably doesn't help you because I don't have a copy of it, can't even remember what it was called, something with writer in the name, but it was way focused on grammar, and it was way focused on short, tiny sections of text. No books, no long understandings, just these short bite-sized pieces to then respond with questions and tons of grammar. So then I turned to my childhood. So I grew up in a public school, really liked it. And so one of my favorite books was Worldly Wise. My sister and I both were really good in school, and we both look forward to our Worldly Wise lessons at school every week. So of course, if you really enjoyed something when you were in school, you're gonna find a copy of it. This is a very old copy that I borrowed from somebody, in order to give your kids the same great learning vocab experience, except they hated it. I mean, I can't even express how much they hated it. Not only did my kids hate it, her kids hated it. And so very clearly this was not working for us. Like this wasn't a self-discipline opportunity. This was an absolute outright hatred. So we had to abandon very quickly Worldly Wise, and we had to abandon this great, wonderful curriculum that I had found. Now, all during this time, we were still doing literature and some 5 in a row, but even that began to run out on us. And so we're like, we really need something else. Now, because of my background, I knew what was good and what wasn't good. During that time, we also did try to do some fun things, like we bought them these journal/books where they could write their own stories, draw their own pictures. Some of them will have lines at the bottom so they can tell a story. We also tried just different writing prompts. That wasn't so great either. And here's an example of another kind of journal book you can get like that. These actually did pretty good. So you write the bottom and then draw the picture. So I would read to them from maybe a nature studies book, maybe something that we did, and I would have them summarize it, sort of a Charlotte Mason thing. They would tell it to me, I would write it down, or they would actually practice just a few sentences trying to capture the big thought. Those were fine, and that's actually where I got more of that, not unschooling, but more of like the, let's just kind of meander and see where we're going, and let me keep looking at different curriculums. What we ended up landing on, worked for a season again, was this amazingness, Writers in Residence. Don't be fooled by the giant book, there's a reason. It's so big. But this was created by Apologia. We really love their science, so we're like, hey, let's try out their English. And it was fantastic. The emphasis was on actually learning literature, actually writing, all the different styles of writing. The grammar was important, but not overly emphasized. And the workbook and the textbook are all involved in one thing. So that's why it's so big. There aren't 2 books. All the work was done in here, and so was the textbook stuff. And my kids jumped. Like, their learning jumped. And this was fun. This was good. This was hard. But they were writing essays and loving some of it and learning a ton of it, and very, very manageable, very doable. Absolutely adored this. We also tried IEW at our local school and hated it. So yes, for all of you who are like, IEW was the answer. It wasn't the answer for us because there wasn't enough creativity in it, because it's very prescriptive. Thankfully, there was a year 2 for the Writers in Residence, and then it stopped. That was all there was. It was just 2 years. And so we could have slowed it down and made it a 3-year curriculum, but they did actually get through all of it in 2 years. And then and this is the teacher's manual, and then I was blown away to find out not only did they only write 2 years, but they actually discontinued making and selling this product. I don't know why. Still, Deborah Bell, wherever you are, thank you so much for this curriculum. It is fantastic. I wish there had been more. I would never left this curriculum if I could have stayed. So now what? back in the same thing. Okay, around the same time we started talking to a friend of mine who had taught middle school English in a private Christian school and very skilled, was a writer as well as an artist. And so she recommended, so we're going into middle school now, Hot Fudge Monday. Now this turned out to be a huge hit too. This is, because here's the thing about grammar. If you know what a noun is, why are you being taught the noun again? If you know what a verb is, you learned that. So why are you being taught the verb again? So if you already know what a verb is, you don't really need to be retaught that information. You just need a reminder. So in this case, you would actually choose something, sorry I'm laughing, choose something based on a different concept. So in this case, they have all the nouns at the beginning, and so you could go back to the nouns, and you would read these explanation again of what it was, but then you got to do just a simple, funny writing project, and her kids would actually beg for it at her school. But see, an interjection is an expression of a strong emotion, but all the expressions of emotion don't have to be serious. In fact, in the television show Batman, crime fighter Robin uses a collection of goofy and humorous interjections. He says things like, "Holy spider webs! It's that malicious fiend, Black Widow," or "Suffering stalactites! The cave is lined with super repellent bat foil." And so on the lines below, write some sentences that use a ridiculous interjection at the opening. You may create several sentences about one topic or situation, or you may write random collection of sentences on a variety of subjects. And so then you would write that. And I'm choosing a page that they didn't work on. But the way we did it was the kids were allowed to choose one project a day, once a week. And so some of them were fixing things, some of them were adjusting things, but that way they could go back to the grammar concepts that they needed extra encouragement and help on and reminders without necessarily being forced to relearn everything all over again. Then this one was even more of a hit. Funny stuff. Middle school, excellent. You were actually going through and correcting jokes. So they're trying to find, there'll either be mistakes in spelling, capitalization, grammar, all kinds of stuff. You can have them rewrite the whole paragraph, but in our case, we just had them fix it in the paragraph because we were also doing other curriculum. Sometimes I use this actually for my overly achieving child. I actually did stuff together, and maybe that's why she loves reading right now. But so a little turtle began to climb a tree. It took him a lot of time, but he finally reached the top, jumped into the air with excitement, and crashed to the ground. After catching his breath, he slowly climbed the tree again, jumped in the air, and fell to the ground. The turtle repeated the same thing over and over again, while a couple of birds sitting on a branch watched. Finally, the female bird turned to her mate. "Dear," he said, "I think it may be time to tell him he's adopted." So, you know this one was a hit because the kids would actually tell each other the jokes and read them out loud, and then the next kid would be upset that they had ruined the joke. So, yeah, so these two, middle school, these are great. You could use them in high school too, no problem. The third thing we used that year for middle school was apples. This is a spelling, more traditional spelling program where they teach you the concept at the top, and then you go through and practice the words. So if you're adding, and then you'd have to write out the what the answer, what the rule was, so they help you. And that really aided my second and third daughter. We kind of skipped spelling, and my oldest kind of skipped spelling a little bit with him because he was a pretty good speller when he was younger, and then his spelling got really wonky, and we're like, oh, maybe we should have some spelling. So we've used Spell UC, and we've used apples, and they didn't love it. This is curriculum is Christian, and so it could get a little religious, but funny stuff and Hot Fudge Monday were not. So that's important to know when you're trying to pick something. Also, I should clarify that if you do decide to use the Apologia, it is definitely Christian as well. The books that there's a writing one, but there's also a literature one, and the books they picked were excellent, and the way that they analyzed and everything would have been stuff that we did in college, stuff that we would have done in high school, just brought down to that level for the kids. We did Because of Winn-Dixie, Stuart Little, so that gives you an idea of where kind of that lands. But they also get to do a pick your own book, which was really fun. Some other things we did for grammar, we did keep this out. We have this out for my other kids. Super Grammar. So this one is a comic book that talks about the different grammar rules. So you can hit it from a different side if you want to. Probably didn't need this one, but it was fun. I think it was fun. I made one of my kids read it. They were like, eh, but they probably weren't a superhero person. The last kids probably would find it more fun. We also tried a lot of these Usborne, write your own poems, write adventure stories, things like that. And these, I would have saved my money. They're not bad. They just probably, so you can see how much we didn't finish. We probably just should have skipped them because we probably had other things that covered them. We also used some Thinking Tree and did a poetry unit on that, which they absolutely hated, was pulling teeth to get them to do that. I'm really sad. I love Thinking Tree. I think Thinking Tree looked beautiful, sounded beautiful. My sister used it with her kids. We've tried it multiple times in multiple ways, and only their book, I think, on money actually worked for us. And even that one, they didn't like it, but that child thought it was helpful. But we ended up having to say that was a bust for us, which was kind of a bummer too. But if you like Thinking Tree, yay! I'm a huge fan. We also did, for my writers, Secrets to Storytelling book. This was, I ended up buying extra copies on accident, so this is the unwritten in copy. But here we have a lot of the same idea of, walking through a writer's brain, and it gives a lot of prompts, which can be helpful depending on the kind of kid. That was partly why it wasn't a hit with one of my children, because they actually have all their own ideas. They don't need any more ideas. They've got plenty of ideas. So that was a challenge for them. But the rest of them, this was helpful. And I actually, when we finished this with one of my kids, we didn't do all of it, but we did, because again, it was on top of other things. She actually started writing short stories too, so she could be like her big sister. So now she writes short stories on her own for fun. All that to say, we ran out of middle school curriculum. We ran out of the other curriculum. And we got to the point where we're like, now what? I needed something stable that I could then use with my kids from, I still had I think a third grader, and then I had a fifth grader and a seventh grader. And the ninth grader was already taking classes at our community program. And so he pushed me so bad. I love that kid. He pushed me so bad that he was like, no, I don't want you to be my teacher anymore. And I'm like, okay, fine, here's some other teachers for you. And then later on he came back and he was like, oh, I wish I had stayed with you, but that's fine. We all have junior high and middle school. That's reality. So what did we end up landing on was the Essentials in Literature and the Essentials in Writing program. Now, the Essentials in Writing is the one I really, really focus on with the third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. And then when they get to high school, it splits to Essentials in Literature, well, and even eighth grade, Essentials in Literature and Essentials in Writing. And the reason that I love them is because the Essentials in Writing, the first half of the book is all grammar repeats, and the second half of the book is all writing. But it's broken up into bite-sized pieces, and if you understand the lesson on day one, you can take the test and skip the rest of the lesson on the grammar side, go all the way to the end, take that test, and if that child passes that test, they have been reviewing it, they understand it, the concept is settled, they can move on. If they do not understand it, they have about 5 days to practice each concept, and it builds progressively bigger. But with the third graders, fourth graders, about those ages, the program works in about 15 to 20 minutes. It has a DVD or an online component where they actually teach the child the information and then you're backing it up. And then when they get to the second half, they're actually writing. They're applying for the rest of the year all the things they learned. And I would even say it's not even half. I'd say it's, by the time you get to the older grades, it's a third of grammar. And the majority of it is actually hands-on writing. And I got to see these kids take these bite-sized pieces. Some of the times they had like a 10-minute-a-day assignment, but that 10-minute-a-day assignment would be stretched over a week. And at the end of it, they had a 5-paragraph essay that they wrote in 10 to 15 minutes a day. And for the overwhelmed writers to see that accomplishment, to realize that a little thing can be done over time and they can build something really big and be super proud of it, was amazing. There's enough creativity where they're making their own sentences combined with some things that are repetitive. The creators are Christian, but it's not a Christian-based curriculum, so you can use it if you're in a co-op situation where you have to not use a Christian curriculum, but you're also not getting any sludge. If you're Christians and you want something like that that doesn't have anything that you have to be wary of. The guy's funny. The kids thought he was a little not like too silly for the younger grades, but that was partly because we started at a lower level and like worked our way up, because it isn't a dumbed down curriculum by any way, shape, or form. And yet you're not spending hours and hours and hours of repetitive work. Now that my daughter is in 10th grade, she is using the 11th grade curriculum as an honors English version. And it takes her quite a few hours a week to get through the writing and the literature portions. But you know, they always do a drama piece, so they did Our Town this year, and we watched some Shakespeare. We've done some different things. We've added in some books just because they do basically do one large book a year. In this case, it's The Great Gatsby, and so it's healthier for them to read more full books rather than just excerpts. But the reason that they choose excerpts is because he wants you to be introduced to a wide variety of writing styles, so science fiction and fantasy, and I think The Hobbit is their 8th grade or 9th grade literature. Yeah, it must be 9th grade literature. So that is something, if you're looking for a curriculum, that is what we ended up landing on. I have the handbook right here for level 8, and it has all the corrections in it, so the kids can't go necessarily and sneak off. They also give you a few different schedules, different ways you can run it. So in this case, they'll tell you like on week 12, you're just going to repeat the assignment personal narrative, and you're going to do the roughing it. Now, the other thing I really like about this curriculum is, again, if you've got a kid that masters the concept, there's no point in beating the bush or beating the dead horse. So in this case, the way that they designed the writing portion is if they write a 5-paragraph essay, put all their hard work into it, get it finished, and they demonstrate the understanding of a persuasive essay, then they're reassigned a persuasive essay. If they didn't understand the concept, you can then have them do another persuasive essay and grow their skills, right? Get better. But if your child is a straight A student who has got piles and piles of homework and is doing amazing and produces a beautiful high school or college quality persuasive essay, you can move on. They don't have to do it again. And that's the incentive for my kids to do a really good job the first time, because then I will give them permission to skip the second time it comes around. And there's plenty of work that they're still doing, even when they remove that. So there's this freedom for the parents to be able to pick and choose things to add or subtract based on the level that the kids need to actually practice. They also have, in the literature portion, they have hands-on activities that you can choose to add or not add. And so there's a lot of flexibility there. Also, if you are feeling overwhelmed as a writing teacher, they do have a limited space, but you can actually pay them to correct your children's essays, which I think is amazing, because if you really want your kids, or you have kids that are like super writers, or you have kids you don't know where, like how well did they actually complete that assignment? And I mean, thankfully they give you a rubric, so you can go through and say, okay, yeah, they did this, and this equals this many points. But if you're feeling unsure, unconfident about it, you can actually pay someone else to do it. The other thing that has been a huge blessing for us is the online component isn't necessary if the kids are really good at reading the information and understanding it, because the online component basically teaches the lesson aloud for all of those audio and visual learners. But if you have a reading learner, then like my child, she just literally reads the information, understands the information, what's being asked of her, and she doesn't actually watch the videos anymore. So that's a really fascinating part of it. It's expensive, but all high school curriculum, warning you now, all high school curriculum is expensive. So part of it is I'm fine, I'm satisfied with the way that it works. Why did we use it as an honors program? Like I said, this particular child is extremely excellent at almost all parts of literature and writing, and so she had already studied The Hobbit in 8th grade, and so when they got to 9th grade and we just decided to choose this curriculum for her permanently, The Hobbit was the only book that they read that year, so she asked to jump one grade up. So we ended up jumping one grade up, and we stayed one grade up ever since. She's actually going to be going to our local community college to get her AA degree for the last 2 years of her high school program. So we knew that this would be her last kind of year to be able to be in this program, and so we weren't worried about running out of years by following it all the way to the top. The other two kids ended up doing amazing in this program. It really gave them the confidence that they needed, especially the youngest. And now they've gone into taking some classes with other teachers, and they all walked in and were able to write their essays, do their creative writing, enjoying the process. The poems they bring home are hilarious. And so I really am happy. I could not be more thrilled with having finally, after so many years, found something that worked for us. And but I want to assure you that if you do the meandering thing like we have done, it's okay, right? The positive about English and writing is that the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. So having them just write and write and write, there's ways that you could just have them write every day. They're going to be a better writer. A little bit of correction, and it's nice to have some kind of writing that you correct and some kind of writing that you don't correct, right? Journals, biography, some kind of response type thing. You have something and tell them at the beginning, this is the goal of why you're doing this. And then this one is for your free write. And I'm not going to be doing any kind of grammar, spelling corrections at all. This is just for you to be able to practice your writing. You can use Story Dice for prompts. You can use Miss Bernard as a wild card, is a really fun way to learn your grammar in a card game format for the younger years. And so I think there is, if you pick really great books, you give them a baseline of grammar. Come on, where's your verb? Where's your noun? Where's your preposition? Where's your, my kids and I argue all the time about where a comma should go. We all feel very strongly about our commas, and we all can justify why, have intelligent conversations to why their comma is acceptable and why their comma is not acceptable. But I think there's that freedom to be able to go, now that we know the rules, we're not going to learn them again and again and again, and we're not going to spend our time diagramming sentences. I think that's great if you enjoy doing it, but I kind of see that as turning English into math. Math is A plus B equals C situation, and diagramming is if I have this amount of words in my sentence in this order, then I have created a good sentence. And the reality is a lot of excellent writing isn't done that way. We even discussed like the difference between having formal speech in an essay, journalism speech, which is different than a formal speech of an essay, and then you have your play dialogue, which should be more like an actual conversation, and you should have contractions, but you should not have contractions in your journalism. You should not have contractions in your essay, and the way that you would put a newspaper article or a web article should go completely different. So yes, again, because of my background, we do emphasize those things, but I just want you to know that if you're coming at this from hey, I have meandered around for a while, your kids can still get to the end of it and find themselves in a very healthy, safe place. Would I have meandered with math? No. I know people who do, but I feel like every time math gets switched for curriculum's sake, then there is a learning gap. And the reason I feel that way is because that's what I experienced. So when I was this is just a tidbit extra, guys. I know it's a long video, sorry. When I was in 6th grade, I was at the very top of my school, my class. Not like the A1 kid, but I was very, very capable, and I handled everything really well. The work was not hard for me, and I was excellent in my math. I was excellent in my English. Moved me to a private school for a year, and the difference was I was just doing workbooks on my own by myself in the corner, and my grade level in math dropped an entire grade because even though I tested into the class, so the workbooks I was supposed to be using, the gap of what I'd been learning and the way that this new stuff worked was so completely different. Next year I'm back in the public school, and I am not caught up with all of my peers that I would have been with. We also moved from one state to another state, so expectations were different, and you've got to think through, like, yes, of course, every time a kid moves from one place to another and they get a new curriculum, that catch-up time is a challenge, right? And that's just my heart to my Navy friends that move a lot, my military friends that move a lot, because that is a real challenge. By the time I graduated from high school, I did finish pre-calculus, and I was able to test out of taking any math in in college. So I succeeded in catching up, but it was a lot of work for me. And I think if I had stayed in the same system, then that wouldn't have happened. And so maybe that's why I feel strongly about that. That was the side note. Anyway, I hope that helped you think through some of your choices and also affirmed you when you're making some of those harder choices about staying or switching curriculums. If you find you love a curriculum and it only lasts for so long, that doesn't mean don't use it. We definitely got our best out of some of these programs, and I hope that you have a fantastic day, that you're doing a great job. I know you're a hard worker. I know you care so much, or else you wouldn't be homeschooling your kids. And I just speak a blessing over you today, and I will see you soon. Thanks. Bye.